When I was about 12 years old, I remember being at home and our family getting a knock at the door and my mother talking to someone for a while and coming back and saying, "Your stepfather isn't going to be home for a while. Something happened and he's probably going to prison." I remember being confused. I remember crying. I remember trying to ask questions, but still being really confused with the answers. And what I essentially learned, I'd grown up with a stepfather who was undocumented. The next months were filled with a lot of confusion, a lot of feeling stigma and the taboo of having an incarcerated parent, of being told by family not to talk about it, to friends at school, for safety, for our own protection. Getting phone calls and hearing the automated system from a prison telling you that your family member is calling you and you need to press whatever number to accept the call. Of always having conversations with my stepfather that felt surveyed, of feeling like this one very vital person in my household was suddenly gone, and seeing my mother go through the stress of suddenly becoming a single parent, of having to protect us, of having to navigate the complexity of this world and raising two Black kids alone. And eventually my stepfather was sent to a prison in Ohio, and me and my family started the process of visiting him. And I remember prison visitation days were always weird. It's like, it felt kind of like you dress up like you're going to church, but then we drive like an hour or two away, and then we'd go to this massive parking lot, go into this cement building. We'd put all of our things in lockers, give our ID, wait in the waiting room, and then go to the visitation lobby. And I remember my stepdad would be wearing his prison uniform and we'd talk. But around the time, I had so many issues at home. I was navigating being queer. I was going through teenage angst. I was feeling angry. I felt misunderstood. And every time I showed up to visit or talk on the phone, sometimes I'd talk about things that were really happening, but mostly I'd gotten used to being a child that needed to not cause any issues in a situation where we had this huge issue that we were facing. And I had a lot of anger, a lot of righteous anger, also a lot of anger that I didn't know where to place. And this person that I had loved, that drove me to bookstores growing up, that would watch the news and debate about politics, that would invite his friends to come to my garage sales when I was a kid, who would buy me whatever weird fucking toy I wanted in the store. This sweet, sweet person was suddenly gone. And I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't know how to process it. Eventually, when I graduated high school, he was released and sent back to Jamaica. I visited him and I came out, and coming out was hard. I come from a Jamaican family, and it isn't that, it's almost like the trauma of coming out in a family that was conflicted about anyway was compounded by the trauma of state violence, of incarceration, of deportation, of feeling like so much time had been lost. And now I was trying to acknowledge my truth. And all of this future time that I dreamed of was also going to be lost as well. And I really share this because I want to note how personal incarceration and immigration and deportation is to me, how angry it makes me when regular Americans or Black people or people that also have a lot to lose from being criminalized and targeted and surveyed, but they think it's okay when it happens to other people. And I think, as both someone who understands myself as a Black American and a Jamaican American, I can grasp both sides. I understand the privilege of having American citizenship, but I also understand and demand solidarity of myself. And for anyone that watches this channel, I demand solidarity of you. You should not get to enjoy the fruits of this nation and the genocide and the blood money and the violence that has bought all of the privileges that we get to experience now without feeling guilt, without having to confront something, without having to face a contradiction, which is underneath whatever safety you have. If someone else being otherized, is someone else being called a criminal, is someone else being deported, is someone else's family being torn apart. But what if it's your family? And what would you do then? And why does it matter that it would need to happen to you for you to care? We are entering a new era where we will be required to push back against the propaganda and disinformation that is in Trump's administration, how we need to begin to organize in structures of mutual aid and rapid response systems to help each other, to help people in our communities know their rights, to document when ICE and Border Patrol and other entities of the state come into our communities to sow fear into people and or to deport them. This is, it's just fucking nuts. So this video is going to be for anyone that has been frustrated about the situation that is happening all around the US, who feels kind of conflicted and confused.
Deport illegal criminals, illegal immigrants from this country, but the president has said that, of course, the illegal criminal drug dealers, the rapists, the murderers, the individuals who have committed heinous acts on the interior of our country and who have terrorized law-abiding American citizens, absolutely, those should be the priority of ICE, but that doesn't mean that the other illegal criminals who entered our nation's borders are off the table.
Carolina immigration. Of the 3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office, can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
If the Trump administration is saying that they care about criminals coming to this country, why is ICE going to schools, places of worship, and businesses where children are, where people are practicing their religion, where people are working and providing money for their families and their community? We're the criminals.
Donald Trump has been found guilty of all 34 charges in his hush money case, which makes him the first former US president with a criminal conviction, and it makes him the first major party candidate to run for president right now as a felon. The 34 charges he faced are all Class E felonies in New York, the lowest tier in the state, but each charge carries a maximum sentence of 4 years. So, theoretically, Trump could be facing 136 years in prison, but it's highly unlikely he will actually serve any time behind bars. The judge might consider the unprecedented nature of the case, because, like all former presidents, Trump is entitled to lifelong protection from the Secret Service. So, even behind bars, agents would need to protect him in prison. The 34 charges are all pretty much to do with falsifying business records and basically writing off hush money as a illegal expense.
All of the excuses that people have given Trump along the way about how he can help the economy, about all these other things, and how the benefits of what Trump can offer people that are willing to ignore the situation are nothing compared to the amount of violence and terror and evil that this administration is sowing. And this shift in saying that they're targeting criminals, but they're actually going to pillars of community, is showing that these new policies aren't actually about enforcement or protecting this country or about crime. It's about sowing fear into populations of people. It's about normalizing the state coming into your community and harassing people. And it's about trying to set an environment where knowing your rights equals trying to escape arrest or trying to resist the state.
For instance, Chicago, very well educated. They've been educated how to defy ICE, how to hide from ICE. And I've seen many pamphlets from many NGOs. Here's how you escape ICE from arresting you. Here's what you need to do. They call it know your rights. I call it how to escape arrest. There's a warrant for your arrest, and they tell you how to hide from ICE. No, don't open your door. Don't answer questions. Okay, you can call it know your rights all you want, but there's an order for their removal. They've been ordered removed by a federal judge after due process at great taxpayer expense.
This current situation is sending the message that no one is safe, that you should be fearful of sending your kids to school. I mean, in Chicago, it was reported that ICE went to schools midday and there were educators online speaking about this situation.
Earlier today, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents showed up at Hemline Elementary School. School staff followed CPS established protocols. They kept ICE agents outside of the school and contacted CPS's law department and CPS's Office of Safety and Security for further guidance. The ICE agents were not allowed into the school and were not permitted to speak to any students or staff members. Here is the bottom line. Our students and staff are safe. Our protocols were followed. We are very thankful for our school staff for following established district protocol. We want to remind families and staff that CPS will continue to protect our students and their families. In alignment with the Illinois Trust Act and Chicago's Welcoming City Ordinance, CPS does not ask for our family's immigration status. We will not coordinate with immigration and custom enforcement agents. Does not share student records with ICE, except in the rare case where there is a court order or consent from a parent or a guardian.
That this was a strategy to, one, show up to these schools and detain children, but ultimately to detain these children in the hopes that their parents would come to pick them up, and these parents would care enough about their kids to end up in ICE custody. Even here in central Ohio, someone was recently detained by ICE, even though they were in this country legally. In Cleveland, Ohio, where I grew up, a taqueria was shut down because ICE came in and took those people away. And that was a place that people in my family would go to on a regular basis. It was open until 2 a.m. in Coventry. And what this shows is that white supremacy and xenophobia is so intent on making itself known and making itself true that is willing to lie, spread propaganda and disinformation, and go into communities and rip them apart. For what? Probably for profit. And one of the best explanations that I've seen of what Trump is probably attempting to do right now in terms of normalizing all of the modes of behavior, about trying to stretch the boundaries of what his powers are as the president of the United States in relation to Congress and Senate, and trying to push what was in Project 2025, which was known as Unitary Executive Theory, which is a theory that purports that the president of the United States has the sole authority over the executive branch. Even if it's a fucking crazy, ugly white man. Even if it's a fucking crazy, ugly white man. Shock doctrine is a concept developed by journalist and author Naomi Klein in her 2007 book, The Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism. It describes how governments and corporations exploit crises where natural disasters, economic collapses, wars, or terrorists to push through radical free market policies, where natural disasters, economic collapses, wars, or terrorist attacks to push through radical free market policies that would otherwise be politically impossible. These policies often involve privatization, deregulation, and cuts to social services, benefiting elites while harming ordinary people. The shock doctrine sees crisis as an opportunity. Creating a crisis at the border, creating a crisis of crime in inner cities, allows this new administration, this new government to pass things that are unconstitutional, that go against Geneva Codes of Convention, and that are immoral. And what shock doctrine does is that it not only pushes economic policies, it's about how crises are manufactured or exploited to disorient people, wear them down, and make them accept policies they would otherwise resist. This is going to be a long haul fight, whether it is the next 4 years or 8 years or 20 years, because we all know fucking Trump doesn't want to give up he wants to be president for the rest of his life. And if you saw his inauguration speech, he doesn't look good. So I just hate the idea of him being in office. He just sounds fucking horrible. And I think this time around, he's sure that he's a real politician. He has all these people around him. And really what I honestly think that he's trying to do with like cutting federal funding for things and cutting federal employees and government agencies, I think he's trying to gather millions and billions of dollars and trying to allocate policies and contracts that can pay corporations that are in the back pockets of his friends and people that he knows. And he's trying to turn this country into not only he's trying to turn this country not only into an ethno state, he's just also trying to feed and get profit for himself and his friends. So much of this is so personal to me because I grew up with my family immigrated to the US in the late 1970s from Jamaica. I grew up with undocumented people in my family. And when I really look back at my childhood, not only did I have just like the trauma of coming up in a family that didn't really understand queerness and all of those things, but really, when I was writing my memoir, my first book, When They Tell You to Be Good, what I kind of unraveled in that process was that when I was 12, the violence of having a father who was incarcerated, of experiencing the processes of dehumanization, of visiting a prison, seeing my father in prison, and then going home and remembering that this was a man that bought me ice cream and took me to the toy store and took me to the bookstore and would let me sit on his lap when he watched the news and liked to play dominoes and loved to laugh and loved to drive. Even this past year, I went to the US-Mexican border and did a month of volunteering with a humanitarian aid group. That my politics as an anarchist, as an abolitionist, is so tied to these early experiences of feeling conflicted, confused, upset, traumatized by how my stepfather could just be taken away, incarcerated, and then sent to his homeland without any kind of consideration as to the psychological impacts of that on his family, without any consideration. After my father was basically locked up the first time, I remember we went through the house and we packed up all of his things and we had to put them away in storage because I remember my mother was worried. I feel so much for all of the people getting interviewed on the news, all of the parents who have been deported already, that will be deported, because children don't understand what's happening. And even if you explain it to them, you can kind of help them understand to some degree or help prepare them. But the sheer shock and sadness and terror and trauma of losing a parent, of losing a family member to deportation is just so jarring and overwhelming.
What's going to happen is you are going to pay a significant fine. You are going to learn English. You are going to go to the back of the line so that you don't get ahead of somebody who was in Mexico City applying legally. But after you've done these things over a certain period of time, you can earn your citizenship. So that it's not something that is guaranteed or automatic. You've got to earn it, but over time, you give people an opportunity. Now, it only works though if you do all the pieces. I think the American people, they appreciate and believe in immigration, but they can't have a situation where you just have 500,000 people pouring over the border without any kind of mechanism to control it. So we've got to deal with that at the same time as we deal in a humane fashion with folks who have put down roots here, have become our neighbors, have become our friends. They may have children who are US citizens. That's the kind of comprehensive approach that we have to take.
There are actions I have the legal authority to take as president, the same kinds of actions taken by Democratic and Republican presidents before me, that will help make our immigration system more fair and more just. Even as we are a nation of immigrants, we're also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws, and I believe that they must be held accountable, especially those who may be dangerous. That's why over the past 6 years, deportations of criminals are up 80%. And that's why we're going to keep focusing enforcement resources on actual threats to our security.
Those we spoke to gave President Barack Obama mixed reviews. According to a survey by the Pew Hispanic Center, deportations have reached record levels under President Obama, rising to an annual average of nearly 400,000 since 2009. That's 30% higher than the annual average during Bush's second term. She says that's not good. Obama was supposed to do something to help, but instead of helping, he's doing the opposite. According to the survey, of the Latinos that are aware that the Obama administration stepped up deportations of unauthorized immigrants, 77% disapprove of the way his administration is handling the issue. He isn't a good president because he promises things that he doesn't do, and he isn't helping the immigrants this way. But not everyone believes President Obama is to blame. He's not the one doing this. It's his administration. I think he wants to help the immigrants. Sandra Velasquez is from Veracruz, and she says the immigrants she knows that have crossed over illegally come to the United States to work, and they wouldn't hurt anyone. I think the work we do for the amount we get paid, those living here legally wouldn't do. And although some we spoke to were turned off by deportation levels, the survey finds although most Latinos disapprove of the deportation policy under Obama's administration, they still prefer Obama as a president over any of the GOP candidates. If I could vote, I would vote for him. The survey found that the majority of the Latinos that disapprove of the way the Obama administration has handled deportations still would vote for Obama over Mitt Romney and Rick Perry. In Hidalgo County, Erica Flores, Action 4 News.
The immigration policies of the Obama years and how liberalism tried to paint this post-racial America while 8.5 million people were being deported over the course of 8 years. How there are black people in my life who at various points during the Trump presidency said, he's just targeting like Hispanics and Latinos. Like, it's not really a problem for us. The same budget and policies that's going to allocate money towards militarizing ICE and the Border Patrol is also going to come into our cities and fuck people up and kill poor people, black people, homeless people, trans people. And it's a united front that we have to have if we want to not only save ourselves, but be good human beings in a world that's trying to tear communities apart, tear families apart. This is a moment where we have to not only be paying attention to the news, understanding what our rights are, passing out information that is accurate about how we can protect ourselves, and understanding the importance of mutual aid. And we're going to have more of my Direct Action 101 series. As an anarchist, I continue returning back to wanting to understand the basics of how the U.S. immigration system is operated, but also to the fact that even our Constitution, our laws, don't apply to certain bodies, don't apply to certain kinds of people. I mean, this is why I'm interested in Afro-pessimism and Jackie Wang's politics of innocence, because these are theories that talk about how certain kinds of bodies are not subjected to the same protections as other bodies that are white or rich or of the elite, and how this is a totalizing framework that becomes the basis of modern U.S. fascism, as I explained in my Why the U.S. is Fascist video. And if you haven't checked out that video, I think it's going to be a great companion piece to this one, because I break down my basic framework about how fascism, a state-sanctioned process of the dehumanization, degradation, murder, and torture of certain populations of people for the benefit of set elite or for the state, which we can clearly see happening right now. I really want to return us to the fact that it isn't criminal to want to take care of your family. It isn't criminal to come to the U.S. and to start a new life. The immigration system as we know it is a byproduct of the violence that the U.S. has exported in other parts of the world. To kind of dig into this a little bit more, I want to read a bit of Against Innocence by Jackie Wang, because I think it's a great kind of framework to look at the current rise in fascism that's happening. This zine reads, "Using innocence as a foundation to address anti-black violence is an appeal to the white imaginary, though these arguments are certainly made by people of color as well. Relying on this framework re-entrenches a logic that criminalizes race and constructs subjects as docile. A liberal politics of recognition can only produce a guilt-innocence schematicization that fails to grapple with the fact that there is an a priori association of blackness with guilt, i.e. criminality. Perhaps association is too generous. There is a flat-out conflation of the terms. As Frank B. Walterson noted in Gromsky's Black Marks, the cop's answer to the black subject's question, 'Why did you shoot me?' follows a tautology. 'I shot you because you are black. You are black because I shot you.' In the words of Fanon, the cause is the consequence. Not only are black men assumed guilty until proven innocent, blackness itself is considered synonymous with guilt. Authentic victimhood, passivity, moral purity, and the adoption of a whitewash position are necessary for recognition in the eyes of the state." Walterson, quoting NWA, notes that a nigga on the warpath cannot be a proper subject of empathy. The desire for recognition compels us to be allies with, rather than enemies of the state, to sacrifice ourselves in order to meet the standards of victimhood, to throw our bodies into traffic to prove that the car will hit us, rather than calling for the execution motorists. We may fall back on such appeals for strategic reasons, to win a case or to get the public on our side, but there is a problem when our strategies reinforce a framework in which revolutionary and insurgent politics are unimaginable. And this is so vital for me because this uses this through the lens of anti-blackness, but when we look at the notion of white, straight American citizens as being innocent, and anyone that isn't that, as being a criminal, as being subject to surveillance, as being a likely subject of being stopped and harassed.
Immigrant rights advocate attorney Lara Gregory is among those who created a Know Your Rights campaign in different languages, including Tagalog, through her nonprofit group, New York Center for Education and Legal Remedies. She said, here's what you can do in case ICE agents knock on your door.
If someone knocks at the door, they shouldn't really open it unless they identify themselves as law enforcement officers. They have the right also to ask for a warrant, or if they're asked to sign something, they can say that I don't want to sign anything until I have consulted with an attorney. They actually have a right to remain silent, because the less that you offer information, the better for the person.
She said you can also demand to see a warrant signed by a judge and have them slip it under the door. An ICE warrant does not permit them to enter your home, so if they do not have a warrant signed by a judge, you can refuse to let them in. Now, if they force their way in, she said you have to remain silent and do not resist, ask for a lawyer, and do not sign anything.
I've been reading about knowing your rights, and ICE will use tactics where they literally wear the uniforms of other agencies and pretend to be police officers. They will lie about crimes that they purport that your family members have done in order to get access to your house, in order to trick you into answering their questions, in order to trick you into signing paperwork. Immediately, if you are a human subject that is considered not innocent, it's fuck your human rights. It's fuck your human rights. But you acknowledging your human rights is you going against the project of white supremacy, which is going against the project of America. And if I've learned anything, it's that rich people think that money can get them anything. Rich people think that money can buy them their reality. Rich people think that money can pay people to be silent. Rich people think that investing in money and militarization and repression and suppression of our right to protest and to speak up and to be nuanced about these conversations. Rich people believe that money can buy our silence. And what I ask you is that, what are you going to do when ICE shows up at your door? What are you going to do when ICE shows up at a business that you're in? What are you going to do when you're walking through your city and you see ICE in fake police vests harassing a Haitian migrant or a Dominican person or someone that looks like me? What are you going to do? What are you going to do to resist the fact that the elite think that their money can buy them the world that we live in and deserve to be a part of, but they want to extract from it for profit? What are you going to do? And does it matter that you might or might not have an answer to that question?
Fire department, please! Somebody call the fire department! I'm a man!
The survival of marginalized people has only been possible because people believed that they had a right to exist, that they had a right to flee enslavement and to use the Big Dipper to go north. We should look at the modes of resistance that cropped up in 2016 when Trump was first in office, of people blocking deportation flights, of people challenging things on a constitutional level, of organizations and mutual aid collectives teaming up with civil rights organizations and building networks of lawyers and hotlines that people can contact to notify them when ICE is in their local communities, when someone they know has been detained. What is really required moving forward is that we care about each other, that we care about each other enough to understand the Trump administration is doing, that we understand immigration and borders as an intrinsic system of carcerality and violence, and that we resist these violences by any means necessary, that we become educated. And I know this is going to be something that I'm going to talk about continuously on this channel and on my podcast, The Dugout, moving forward, because it matters. It matters that people come here to seek a better life, to take care of their children, to be the best parts of this country, and then are just disappeared, are dehumanized as people sit by and watch. And what I refuse to do is sit by and watch. And so what I'm going to do is to get organized. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to continue writing and studying this. I'm going to continue making videos like this. Whatever privilege I have as a citizen should be used to speak up for other people and should be used to do what is right, what any human being should do. We live in a world where we can just allow these things to happen. We're giving up our future. We're allowing the state to do whatever they want to us and to other people, and I refuse to hand my life over to white supremacy. What solidarity means is that we act even if there's risk involved. And that's where I'll end this video. I just wanted to make this quick video to kind of rant, to talk about things. I think what is happening now is scary, but what I really demand of people is that you get angry. Really, really get angry, and you understand to really fight for a better future. Not only what is at risk, but what could be gained. What we do now matters. Comment with what you're feeling right now and some ideas on how you can get organized locally. And if you want to learn more about politics or engage in these topics, I encourage you to check out my podcast, The Dugout. Don't let this shit just happen. Don't let America happen to you. Don't just try to survive it. Try to live beyond it. Try to be liberated beyond it.